Hi everyone, Paul Wilson here. You're watching this video today for one of several reasons. Either you attended my session at the DevLearn 2021 conference in Las Vegas and merely want to review the procedures and steps that I covered there. You may also be a member of my YouTube channel. Members of my YouTube channel get access to longer form content that regular subscribers don't get access to. In either case, what we're talking about today, today's session, is making e-learning magic with Adobe Captivate. Specifically what that is I've come up with a series of different types of interactions that are a little bit more advanced and include some extra fun and magic, if you will, that make them a lot more interesting to look at, of course, and to interact with. These have been influenced by questions that my viewers on my YouTube channel have given me, but also things I've seen in other authoring tools that I try to replicate in Captivate itself. In either case, stay tuned to the end of this video where I'll show you a bonus capability that these interactions have that make it real easy for you to build your e-learning. Let's get started. Okay, so I'll be walking you through how to set up these advanced interactions on all of these slides. Let's start off by, first of all, looking at what the end result will look like. So here's a preview of the completed project here. Have a little bit of animation on slide 1, no big deal. And here is the flip card interaction. And the idea here is that there are 3 flip cards. There could be easily 4 or 5. It's just a matter of making some slight modifications to the slides. Notice that the continue button is not presently visible, and it won't be until we've clicked on all 3 of these flip cards. Now the flip cards themselves, they include an effect as well, so you can see, and I can keep flipping these indefinitely, but of course, once I've clicked on all 3, my continue button appears. Let's move on to the next interaction. This is a content carousel. Now, it's quite easy to make a content carousel just using multi-state objects and a couple of buttons on either side. But what's unique about this is that we've got the left arrow grayed out while the right arrow is available. And that's because we're on the first of 4 different carousel items. So if I click here, it gives us a neat little faded zoom effect for our content in the middle. But now, of course, my left arrow is visible. And of course, I can keep going through until I get to the last item. The continue button shows up and my right arrow is grayed out. I can still go back and look at the previous items as well, but I can continue at any time. Now this one's kind of a unique interaction. This was inspired by some cardboard cutout wheels that I've seen back in the day before computers, where if you wanted to create sort of a dynamic job aid, these were often given out by your bank to see the different pieces of information about their financial products, or if you worked in a sales organization, these would show you the different steps of the sales process, and there'd usually be a cutout window. I just went with something very simple. There's a single button here that rotates the wheel and allows you to see all of the items within this particular group of items here. Once you've visited all, in this case, 5 items on the information wheel, the continue button is available. Again, I can keep rotating it if I wish, but I can continue once I've seen all of them. Finally, we're going to talk about building a custom knowledge check. We've all seen the multiple choice questions that are built into Adobe Captivate, and certainly our learners have seen them for years as well. This is just a different way of creating a multiple choice knowledge check slide. So I have these objects here, and of course you can use any shape that you wish. These are multi-state objects, and when I select them, they light up as you see here. And if I hit submit, it'll say there's a better answer in this case. In this example, I'm saying all the answers are correct. And once you select them, of course, you'll get the appropriate feedback and continue. By the way, there's an added bonus here. If I try to change my answer once I've gotten it correct, I can no longer select. These are now disabled. So I can continue and of course go back to this slide and it will still show me the message that I received before. And of course, again, these are all locked, so I can't continue and move forward. So let's go ahead and close this browser here. And let's start with slide number 2, where we have the flip card interaction. So what we need in many forced navigation type interactions, and what I mean by that is that the continue button will be hidden until you've completed whatever the activity is. We need a series of variables that keep track of what you, the learner, or what your learners have done to that point. So we're going to need 3 variables, one for each of these flip cards here. So we'll go into the project drop-down menu and select variables to open that up. I'm going to click on Add New. And I like to start my variables with an underscore, and the reason for that is that they'll always show up grouped together in any list of variables, but they'll also be towards the top of your list because symbols will show up before A, B, C, and so on. So I'm going to call these S02 for slide 02 underscore FC for flip card 01. Now before I hit save, I'm going to select all of that text and copy it to make it easier to create 2 more of the very similar formatted variables here. So I'll go ahead and hit save, click on Add New, paste in that original text and just change the 1 to a 2. Do that one more time so I have a variable for all 3 of my flip cards here. So we can go ahead and we can close the variables window. Now, what we want to do is set up our objects as buttons. And I've done that already. These are already set up as buttons, but I've done a couple of things to make them a little bit more unique than just simply a basic shape. First and foremost, I deleted the rollover and the down state. So what you see here is a flipped state where the content will reside for each of these flip cards. And it's a custom state object. So I've added my own states to this rather than using the rollover down state or visited state here. I've also changed the background from a simple white background or whatever color you wish to an image background. And this image contains this little flip card icon in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, it's set up to tile to the bottom right, so it will always appear in the bottom right. The image is large enough that you would never see the repeating icon that would normally happen with a tiled image. It's quite large, so no worries there. And I've done that for the other 3 flip cards as well. So let's go ahead and write our first advanced action for this slide here. So we'll go into the project drop-down menu and select advanced actions. Now for the first one, we'll call it slide 02. Again, you'll see my naming convention that I use frequently throughout my e-learning projects. Flip card 01. Okay. And obviously we'll need flip card 02 and flip card 03 when the time is there. First thing I want to take care of is what happens when we press that flip card or click that flip card. So I'm going to name this tab click. Now remember, we want to assign a value to those variables each time we click on one of these flip cards so we can keep track of whether all 3 flip cards have been pressed or not. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assign flip card 01 with a literal value of 1. We're also going to apply an effect, and this effect will look like the first half of flipping the card around. And this is achieved through an effect called collapse across. So we're going to apply effect. We often think of effects as something you do on the timing panel, but they can be done in advanced actions as well. So here on slide 2, I do have slide 2, flip card 1. And we're going to choose, in this case, an exit effect. So this is essentially, we're making the object disappear from the slide, essentially. And that is collapse across. When you choose an effect in an advanced action, you'll see this 3-dot icon or 3-dot button that is basically settings for that particular interaction. So if we click on that, we can edit the parameters associated with this effect. 2 seconds is too long for this to flip around, especially if this is only half of that. So I'm going to change this value to 0.3, hit enter, and click OK. Now, in order to see that, advanced actions run very quickly. In order to see the effect take place, I need to delay the next action I'm about to do by that same 0.3 seconds to give it time to show you that collapse across effect. So I'm going to select delay next action as my next action, and we're going to put in the literal value 0.3 for the number of seconds that we wish to delay. Now we want to change the state from what we're currently displaying here to what's on the quote-unquote other side of this flip card. So we're going to go to next state, and we just need to choose which object that we're working with here. So this is slide 2, flip card 1. I'm going to choose that. And we're also going to apply another version of the flip effect or collapse across effect. In this case, we're going to use stretch across, which is the opposite of collapse across. So first I'm going to select flip card 1, and we'll choose our effect. And now we're going to choose an entrance effect. And in this case here, it's going to be stretch across. And we want to go into the parameters of that effect. And again, set it for 0.3 seconds. And we'll click OK. So that takes care of the flipping portion of our advanced action. What we need to also include in this advanced action is a completion check. And we're going to do that on the second tab. I'm going to call this check. And this is a conditional advanced action or a conditional tab. So we're going to select that. And we're just going to look at the value of our variables to see if they've all been pressed. Or in other words, if they've all been assigned a value of 1. So we'll double click on that, choose variable, and choose S02 flip card 01, and check to see if it is equal to the literal value of 1. You could type all that out again, or you can simply copy it as I'm doing here, pasting it in 2 more times, and we'll just change which variable we're working with for the second and the third of these actions. There we go. So we're checking to see if all 3 variables are equal to 1. If they are, we're simply going to show our continue button because, of course, the learner is now free to move on to the next slide. So I've labeled all my continue buttons in this project. Slide 02 continue, slide 3 continue, and so on. So we'll choose the second one there, and we'll save this as an action. Click OK. Now, before I close this window, I have an opportunity now to create my second and my third flip card advanced action. You might be thinking to yourself, this is a long process. Is there any shortcuts to this process? And the answer, of course, is yes. So I can start with the structure of this advanced action when I create a new advanced action by using the duplicate action icon in the upper right-hand corner of the advanced action window. So if I press that, I get an exact copy of the original advanced action. I'm just going to give it a new action name. So we'll get rid of that beginning bit there, and we'll just change the 1 to 2. Now, in this case here, we're going to be working with a different variable. So I'm going to change that to flipCard2, the variable for flipCard2. And we're going to be applying the effect on flipCard2, both before the change of state and after. So we're just going to change all of these to flipCard2. And literally, that is all we need to do in this case here. So we'll select flipCard2. I don't need to change anything on the check tab because that remains the same for all three versions of this advanced action. And now I simply update the action, click OK, and let's duplicate it once more for flipCard3. So I'll press that duplicate action. We'll change the title to flipCard3. And again, we'll just change which variable we're working with here and which objects we're working with as well. flipCard3, flipCard3, and flipCard3. Let's update that action, click OK, and hit close. So now to set this up, all we need to do is select our first flip card, go to the Actions tab, and select Execute Advanced Actions, and make sure that flip card 01 is selected. Do the same thing for flip card 02, Execute Advanced Actions, flip card 2, and the third one here, Execute Advanced Actions, and flip card 3. Again, just make sure your Continue button is set up to not be visible in output. And of course, only once the learner clicks on all three of these will the Continue button be available. Let's test this out. Let's preview HTML5 in browser. So I'll click play. Here's our title slide. And we'll go ahead and go to begin. So we have wash your hands, physical distance, clean and disinfect surfaces. If I click on these to learn more, it does the flip effect. And that works really kind of cool. And of course, once I've clicked on this one, the Continue button is now available. Let's go ahead and close the browser. I'm going to hide these first slides. Here's a little tip for you when you're previewing individual slides. Because the Preview Next 5 Slides option really only displays the old Shockwave Flash version of Preview. You want to use HTML5 in browser. So when I'm ready to preview slide number 3, we can skip over slide 1 and 2 just by hiding them on your film strip there. So let's move on to slide number 3 and see what we need to do here. So again, we have a left arrow button. Currently, it doesn't have any actions associated with it. And we also have this multi-state object in the middle. It contains 4 steps. The normal state is step number 1. Unfortunately, you can't rename the normal state. Step 2 is there, step 3 is there, and step 4 is there. We also have a right arrow, which we'll write some advanced actions for. And again, like before, we have a Continue button, and it's been set to be not visible in output. With regards to the left and right arrows, I've also set them up as buttons, but I've created a disabled state instead of having a rollover and a down state. And the disabled state is simply a semi-transparent version of the right arrow. Essentially, I want it to look like it's disabled or grayed out, if you will. Now, in this case, we need an advanced action for the left arrow, and we need an advanced action for the right arrow, but we also need an advanced action for the on-enter action of the slide. So let's start with that one first. So I'm going to click on the Project drop-down menu and go into Advanced Actions. Like before, we have to keep track of what's going on this slide. In this case, we're going to need a variable that keeps track of which position within the content carousel we're actually at. And you can access variables directly from the Advanced Action window just from this button down here. So I'm going to go ahead and open the variables window, and we're going to add a new variable. And this variable is going to be called underscore slide03 underscore carousel. You didn't see me assign values on the previous slide because we were starting off with no value, or 0 if you will. But in this case here, we are going to be starting off at the first position of our content carousel. So we do need to assign this variable a value of 1. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And we can go ahead and close the variables window and return to the Advanced Action window. This Advanced Action is going to be called S03 underscore enter for on enter Advanced Actions. Now, the first thing we need to do is set up our slide to look the way it should look when we're on position 1. So we're going to need to disable the left button, the left arrow that you see here. So I'm going to select the first line in this script and choose disable. We're going to choose S3 underscore left, that's my left arrow. And we're going to change the state of that very same object so that it looks disabled as well. So we'll disable that in this case here. Now, in case we are revisiting this slide, we should also make sure that the carousel variable, S3 carousel, is assigned a value of 1, because we may have left this slide before and returned to it. So it's important to return it back to that original value in case you've arrived here a second time. So we'll select the carousel variable S03 underscore carousel, and we will assign it a literal value of 1. We're going to enable the right arrow in case we left it on a disabled state. So let's enable the right arrow, and we're going to change its appearance as well. Obviously, it's important to make sure that you label your objects as I've done so that it's easy to identify them, because these would otherwise be, images or smart shapes with a random number attached at the end here. So this is all I need on enter. In this case here, I can save this as an action, click OK, and click close. Before we forget, we can select our film strip slide 3, click on Actions, and make sure that we're executing that advanced action every time we arrive on this slide. So choose S03, enter, and that part's good to go. Next, we need to write the advanced action for one of our 2 arrows. I'm going to start with the right arrow since that's likely the first arrow that you're going to press. So we're going to go on Project, choose Advanced Actions, and we're going to call this advanced action S03 underscore right. The first tab for this advanced action, again, like before, we'll call it click. This is what happens when you click this particular advanced action or click this particular button. And all that we need to do is increment our carousel variable by a value of 1. So I'm going to put in increment slide 03 carousel by a value of 1, hit enter. Now I'm going to have a series of tabs that check the value of this and then perform the appropriate actions for all the different states of my content carousel. So we'll start with item 1. I'll call this tab item 1. And this will be a conditional advanced action, and we're simply going to check the value of our carousel variable. So S03 carousel, if it is equal to the literal value of 1, we're going to perform the following actions down below. If we're on the first tab, we want to, like the on-enter advanced action, disable the left arrow, change its appearance to look disabled. We're going to apply an effect to our carousel item in the middle. And the effect we're going to choose is a faded zoom out. And this is going to be an exit effect. We just need to find that item, faded zoom out here. Now, the key thing with faded zoom out, you've probably seen that in the timing panel, and it's quite frankly a ridiculous effect. It's way too extreme. We're going to make some changes to the settings here, to the parameters itself, to make it a more subtle and effective effect. So we're going to first of all change the duration to, again, that 0.3 seconds. The initial alpha and the X and Y scale will all be 100%. But down below, we're not going to zoom all the way out and make it completely transparent. Well, we are going to make it transparent. But we're only going to zoom out to about 90% of what it was originally. So I'm going to change those values from 0 to 90. That'll be a more subtle effect. And we'll click OK. We also need to, like before, delay our next actions by the appropriate number of seconds so that we can see the effect. So we'll choose the literal value of 0.3 seconds. We're going to change the state of our carousel in the middle to step number 1, or normal in this case here. And we're going to enable our right button, change its appearance to look enabled, which is normal. And now we wish to apply our effect to the middle content item to make it appear again. And that's going to be an entrance effect. So we'll choose Apply Effect. Again, select our carousel item, choose Entrance, and in this case, this will be Faded Zoom In, essentially the opposite of Faded Zoom Out. Let's double check the settings here. So the duration of this is going to be 0.3 seconds. The initial alpha will be 0, but we're starting from 90%, remember. So we'll change those values to 90%, and we should end up with a fully formed and full-size version of the content carousel. So let's click OK, and that's the first conditional advanced action. Like before, we want to duplicate this tab. We don't use the duplicate advanced action function in the upper right-hand corner, but instead we use the duplicate decision. And we're just going to make some small changes here. So we're working now with what happens when we're on item 2. So if our carousel variable is equal to the literal value of 2, we are going to enable our left arrow, because at 2 we of course could still go back. So let's make sure we select the left arrow. We're going to change the state of the left arrow to normal, or enabled if you will. We're going to still apply the same effect to our carousel object in the middle. But what we're going to do is we're going to change to step number 2. And everything else remains the same. So I can now duplicate this to create item 3. So again, we'll just relabel the tab. So we're talking about item 3. And we're checking to see if our carousel variable is on item 3. And again, the only thing we need to change here is now go to step number 3. And if you had, 9, 10, 20 different carousel items, most of them would be like this advanced action. But finally, you're going to come to the last of your content carousel items, and we're going to duplicate 3 and create number 4. And in this case here, 4 would be that final example that we're talking about here. So if we happen to be on the 4th item, we're at the end. We're now going to change the state to step number 4, our last item. We're going to disable our right button because it's now come to the end. We can't go any more forward. And we'll change it to a disabled appearance. We're also going to add an additional action, and that's going to show the continue button. So let's just do that. Show, continue, slide 3, continue. There it is there. So let's save this as an action. Click OK. Now you might be thinking to yourself, that's just the right arrow. How am I going to do the left arrow? This is the best news of all. I duplicate this entire advanced action, all 5 tabs, and I'm going to call this slide 03 left. The only thing you need to change here is we need to change increment to decrement. That's it. So we update that action, click OK, click Close. So we have our onEnter advanced action already. Our continue button is already not visible in output. Our left arrow is going to get the advanced action for left. And our right arrow similarly will get the advanced action for slide 03 right. So let's preview this. Again, we've hidden slide 1 and 2, so we'll see this slide straight away. Make sure it works. Okay, so when we arrive on this slide for the very first time, the continue button is hidden. The left button is disabled and has the appearance of disabled. Let's try the right arrow. So now we're on item 2. The left button is now visible and so is the right. And we can keep going through all of our effects until we get to the continue button and the right arrow is now disabled. And if you click on left, you can go back through and visit this slide as often as you wish and go through all of these items. The advantage of a content carousel really comes into play when you have more than 6, 7, 8 different items within that content carousel. Because normally a click to reveal would require a button for each one of those items. Here you just have the left and right arrows, and you can go through as many content carousel items as you wish. Let's go ahead and close this window. Return to our project. I'm going to go ahead and hide the slide number 3 here. Let's hide that slide. And now we'll work on this. So the information wheel, again, this actually came from a challenge from one of the viewers of my YouTube channel who wanted to be able to have a single button click to reveal. They wanted to be able to click a single button and have it go through all the different stages or steps that they were trying to teach. And this was a challenge, of course, because I figured, how are you going to do that? How are we going to know when we're at the end? So I came up with the visual idea that you would have a wheel that would simply rotate a certain number of degrees and reach all of these different spots. Now, this is a grouped object. In other words, it's made up of a shape, a circle, and a series of custom shapes with text inside of it, all grouped together. That way the angle works and everything. That was probably more challenging than the advanced action itself. but I'll take you through that anyway. You could do this with a graphic if you didn't want to do it the way I've done it here, and I've used an icon in the middle that kind of looks like a rotate button there. So let's just get this back in view here. There we are. And in this case here, we simply have a single advanced action. Like I said, the advanced action is simpler because there really is only one button here. And we need a variable to keep track of the position. So let's start off with that. We'll go into the variables window. And we'll add a new variable. We'll call it underscore slide 04, because that's where we are now. Underscore info underscore wheel. We'll give it an initial value of 1 because, again, we're starting on that first position, and we'll hit save. Let's go ahead and close the variables window, and we'll open up the advanced action window, and we're going to call this slide 04 underscore rotate underscore wheel. These names I'm using, you can use whatever name you wish. But I think it's important that it be a meaningful name so that later when you're working on this project a month from now or 6 months from now, it's clear what this advanced action does. So like before, we're going to have an initial tab that's called click. This is what happens when you click that button. And we're going to do a few things here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to apply an effect. And we're specifically looking at our information wheel. Again, like I said before, this is a grouped object, but you can select a grouped object and apply effects to that as well. I'm going to use, under the basic option, you do have rotate to. Now this action has the following parameters. We can choose the duration, and I think like before, we'll make it nice and quick here, 0.3, and we can choose the amount to rotate it by. Now that's the key thing. In this example, I've got 5 different slices of the pie, if you will. If you do the math on that, I need to rotate it 72 degrees for it to have 1/5 of the circle each time. But obviously, if you're creating an information wheel with more or less of these items, you'll have to calculate a different rotation degrees. So in this case here, we'll go ahead and click on OK. That's taken care of. And we're going to increment our variable by a value of 1. So we'll increment slide 4 infer wheel. That's what I ended up calling it, by a value of 1. So we can kind of keep track of which of the 5 items we're on. So if you click it once, you'll be on 2. Click it 3 times, you'll be on 3, and so on. Now, at each time you click, kind of like what we've done with other advanced actions, we need to check if we've completed this interaction. So we're going to have another tab that's called check. And this will be a conditional advanced action, and we're going to be looking at the value of our information wheel. So let's go into find the variable for info wheel, I've called it. See if it is equal to the literal value of 5. In other words, we've seen them all now. We can delay the next action, and this is important because I don't want the continue button to show until I finish rotating the wheel. So I'm going to delay the next action by literally 0.3 seconds that we've used before. And then we're simply going to show our continue button for slide number 4. Let's save this as an action, click OK, and click Close. There is an entrance effect on this, by the way. Just so you're aware, you'll see this faded zoom in effect combined with a rotation effect, a rotate to, just to give it a neat little rotation zoom effect when we arrive on the slide. But there's nothing for you to do with the advanced actions. That's just going to run every time you arrive on this slide. Okay, so now what we can do, I'll go ahead and hide my timeline here. We'll click the little icon, the spoke, if you will, and we'll go into the Properties Inspector, go into Actions, and make sure that I'm executing the advanced action that we just wrote for Rotate Wheel. So we're good to go. Let's do a preview of this. Again, in HTML5 in browser, our first 3 slides are hidden, so it'll go straight to slide 4. So there we go. Cool effect. Let's learn a little bit about avoiding viruses. And of course, once we get to the 5th of our items, the continue button is available. So a neat little interaction. And quite frankly, this is a useful interaction if you just want something a little bit different, because obviously we've all used click to reveals and tabbed and accordion interactions and all that good stuff. So this is just something a little different to add a little variety to your e-learning course. I'm going to go ahead and hide this slide and move on to the next interaction. Now, this interaction is a knowledge check with multiple choice, multiple answers. In this example, it's essentially an all of the above. So all of the answers contribute to a correct answer. But you could use the same interaction if 2 or any 3 of the answers were correct as well. You just need to modify the advanced action that we're going to use off of the submit button. But before we get into that, the first thing we need to do is we need 5 variables so that we can keep track of which of our 5 answers are selected at this point. So we'll go into the project drop-down menu and select variables. And we'll go ahead and add a new variable. In this case, we'll use underscore S05 underscore answer 01. And I'll copy all of that. We don't need an initial value for this. And we'll paste that in and do answer 2. Answer 3. Answer 4. And don't forget answer 5. Okay, we can go ahead and close the variables window. So just to explain a little bit more about what these are here. So I have 5 of these shapes used as buttons. And the cool thing about shapes is that you can use any style of shape you wish. I happen to choose this polygon shape, which I thought was kind of interesting in this case here. And we've set it up to be used as a button. But we've gotten rid of the rollover and the down states and replaced them with our own custom state called selected, which clearly looks selected. We light it up to indicate that that's something the user has selected. In addition to all 5 of these having those selected states and the rollover and the down states deleted, we have another multi-state object on this slide. I've simply labeled it feedback caption underscore 5, and its default or normal state is just transparent. It's essentially blank. And we've created 2 additional states, a try again state where we give the message, there is a better answer, please try again. And obviously, along with try again, we have correct. That's correct. All of these answers are great ways to protect yourself from viruses. We have a submit button, and we have a continue button like many of the other slides before. The continue button is not displayed in output, so you'll see that it's not visible in output. And our submit button is just a normal button, nothing special about that. So now we have our variables, we have all of our objects on slide. we can start to write our first advanced action, and that first advanced action will be for the selection of the answers themselves. So we'll go ahead into the project drop-down menu and select advanced actions. So let's call this S05 underscore answer 01 for the first button that's on the slide here. This is going to be a conditional advanced action because essentially we're going to be toggling each of these buttons until we have the right combination of answers that we're looking for. So we're going to say if, and we'll look at our variable this time, if answer 1 is equal to the literal value of 0, which it would be by default, we're going to assign answer 01 with the literal value of 1. Now, if it already happens to be 1, we're going to assign it a value of 0, and we do that in the else section down here. Give it a value of 0. So in other words, if I press it once, it gets assigned a value of 1. If I press it again, it gets assigned a value of 0, and it can cycle through that as many times as you press it. Now, we want to visually make it look like it's been selected as well as assign the variable. So we're going to change the state of answer 1, the button, to selected. And similarly, we're going to change the state of answer 1 back to normal if we're pressing it a second time. Now, in the circumstance where we're making a try again attempt, we want to reset that feedback caption as well. So I'm going to also change the state of our feedback caption back to normal. And I'm going to copy this and place it under here as well. So regardless of whether I'm resetting it back to its normal view or its selected view, we're always going to reset it back to normal once we've done that. So now we have the structure, and I could do one of two things. I can, make additional copies of this using the duplicate action. Let's save it as an action first. And I could make an advanced action for slide 05 underscore answer 01 and 2 and 3 and 4 right up to 5 and have 5 different advanced actions here. I also have another option. I can create a shared action that essentially uses this structure and becomes an advanced action fill in the blank, if you will. So all we need to do is use that same structure and just point it to different variables and objects, depending on which of the 5 answers that we wish to apply it to. And I'll show you that process. You understand the process of duplicating an action. We've done that before in this session. But let's do a shared action to show you how that works here. So I'm going to save this as a shared action. Now I'm not going to call it slide 5 answer 1. I'm going to give it a better name. I think I'll call it, in this case, multiple choice selection. Now, Captivate is relatively smart enough to figure out what I need to provide descriptions for this quote-unquote fill-in-the-blank advanced action. I don't need to provide these. We actually will need to override this because we might be using this again with other variables besides the answer 1 variable here. So I'm just going to type in variable used in this interaction. This is the button being pressed. This is the selected state of that button. This is the feedback caption. And this is the normal state of the feedback caption. Again, all you need to do is write something meaningful in here so that later when you're filling out the shared action, you can recognize what those fields are for. Last but not least, we'll say this is the normal state of the button being pressed. Okay, so with all that filled out and the variable associated with it, we can press save. And we now have a shared action version of this. I still like to keep the original advanced action that any shared action is based on for the simple reason that we want to have a copy of it to refer back to since you can't edit shared actions in Adobe Captivate. So let's go ahead and close this now. And what we can do is we can select our first button here and go to Actions and change that action to execute shared action. We'll select the shared action that we just wrote here and click on the action parameters icon. And we'll just fill in the blanks, right? So the variable for this one here is in fact S5, answer 1. The button being pressed is S5, answer 1. The selected state for that button is selected. The feedback caption is feedback caption 5. The normal state for feedback caption is that. And the normal state for the button is that. And we just press save. We repeat that 5 more times. So execute shared action. And just now we just change it up for the different variables and objects that we're using. So now we're pointing it to answer 2. The button being pressed is answer 2. Selected. Feedback caption's the same regardless of which button you're pressing. And the normal states for the 2 objects are there. You can see how easy it is to apply this to multiple objects. So now we're working with the third variable and the third button being pressed, selected. Feedback caption is the same, and the normal states for all of these. 2 more to go. So in this case here, the variable will be 4. 4, selected, feedback caption, normal, normal. Press save. One last one to set up here. Execute shared action. Hit the action parameters icon. And we're now working with answer 5. Pressing button 5, selected, feedback caption, normal, normal. Press save. So we can test that out. It's probably a good idea to test it out as you work through an interaction like this that uses multiple advanced actions. So let's just take a quick look, make sure this works completely as expected, and of course it does. So we can go ahead and close that, return to the project. Now we need to write the advanced action for the submit button. And the submit button essentially is going to check the value of our variables behind all 5 of these buttons. So let's go ahead and write that advanced action. We'll click on the project drop-down menu, select advanced actions, and we'll call this S05 underscore submit. This will be a conditional advanced action because we're going to check the condition of those 5 variables. In this example, we're going to say if the variable answer 1 is equal to the literal value of 1. And I'm going to duplicate this or copy it and paste it 4 more times. And we'll just change which variable we're working with. When you run out of space like this when writing advanced actions, you can just click the plus icon right here. It starts off as a add another row icon, and when you roll over it, it goes to a plus. And we can paste in a 5th version of this. So we'll just change this variable to be answer 2, answer 3, answer 4, and scroll down a little bit here and change that to answer 5. Now, just remember, in this example, all 5 of these answers together is the correct answer. But in some other cases, some of these might be zeros, in other words, not selected as part of the answer. So depending on your particular question that you're asking your learners, you might change this, the values of these variables, and check to see if they're true or not. Now, in this case here, this is what happens when this answer is correct. So we're going to do a bunch of things, actually. We're going to change the state of our feedback caption to the correct message. And we're going to show the continue button because, of course, they've completed this now. So we'll show continue number 5, slide 5, continue. And because once they get it correct, there's no reason to change their answer. We're going to disable the 5 buttons on this slide. So I'm going to select disable and choose answer 1. And again, I can copy this and paste it 4 more times to save a couple of steps there. And just change which object we're disabling here. So in this case here, slide 2, answer 2, answer 3, answer 4, and answer 5. Now, what if it's not correct? Well, we deal with that under the else section here. So I'm going to go into the else section. And all we need to do is change the state of our feedback caption to try again. And remember, once they see the try again message, once they start clicking on their answer buttons again, the try again message will go away because it will change the feedback caption back to normal once they start clicking on other answers. And we built that into the shared action as well. So let's save this as an action, click OK, and click Close. Let's select our Submit button and execute that advanced action on success of this particular interaction here. So S5 Submit is what we want to choose there. And I think we're good to test this out now. So let's preview HTML5 in browser. Okay, so here we are. We can select some of these answers. Maybe we're not quite ready to get this right yet. And we hit submit. We see, there is a better answer. Please try again. So I can select more answers. In this example, of course, all 5 of them are correct. So notice when I select another answer, my feedback caption goes away. And of course, I can add all 5 answers. Hit submit. That's correct. All these answers are a great way to protect yourself from viruses. The continue button appears. Now here's the other thing too. Remember, we disabled this. I can't change the answer. And because I set these objects to retain their state on slide revisits, if I go forward and then back, you'll see they're still selected. My feedback caption still says I got this question correct. and I still can't change it, even though I've returned to this slide after a second visit. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's an easy thing to do. You just need to select the objects in question and make sure that retain state on slide revisit is still selected there. Now let's go ahead and unhide all of these objects again. I'm going to go to the slide 4 there and select slide 1, holding down my shift key so that they're all selected in between, and right click and show the slide. Now here's my homework for you. All of these interactions work great. And of course, they take a certain amount of time to prepare. Each of these slides obviously took time. This has been over an hour's worth of instruction. So, this is obviously not something you can just dash off in a couple of minutes. But here's the great part about all of these interactions and Adobe Captivate. So if I select the flip card interaction as an example here, I copy this over and I create a new blank project of the same size as the original here. And I go ahead and paste this slide into this project here. I'm just going to move it up to the slide 1 position. A couple of things happen. First of all the variables from the original interaction come over with it. You can check that, of course, by just going into the project and the variables window. And you'll see here that there it is, slide 02, button 01 has come over. And of course, along with that is the advanced action as well. Now, sometimes your objects and your variables may get renamed to maintain the uniqueness of their labels or names, but that's okay. Captivate and of course your advanced action is smart enough to map those new names to the advanced action in question. So don't worry about that. But the great part is, if I preview this here without making any modification, this click to reveal flip card interaction will work 100% just like the original here. So I have maintained that, and I can use this over and over again just by changing the content that's in these multi-state objects. So here's my challenge to you. What I'd like to suggest is that you build not only the interactions that we have on your screen here, what we see here, build a 2-card version of the click to reveal flip card. Do a 4-card version, a 5-card version, and so on. Same thing with the content carousel. Build yourself this massive template of interactions that you can copy and paste from and paste into your new projects that you're building, and just replace the content, saving you time in your development process, but still looking like an e-learning superhero when it comes time to pumping out good quality e-learning, in this case, Captivate files that look like magic.
If you thought this video was helpful, please like and share it with your colleagues. If you need help with Adobe Captivate, hire Paul for one-on-one instruction. Paul's goal is to focus on lessons based on your specific needs. Visit his website at captivateteacher.com. And don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel.